You didn't deny the racist thing.
Well, it depends on your definition of racist.
Wow, dude. Twist yourself into a pretzel much? The KKK Grand Wizard sitting in a bed sheet with a hood says, well, it depends on what you mean by racist. Who you see on screen here next to me is a KKK Grand Wizard from 1982. Now, I came across this, and I wanted to listen to what he had to say, because it is disturbingly exact to what congressmen are saying right now. These talking points that he is handing to us of what Congress members and, senators and Republican Party in general. November 4th, 1982, this is an interview with the Grand Wizard of the KKK. While we listen, pay attention to how the reporter treats him and his talking points.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my humble duty tonight to introduce you to the Grand and Imperial Wizard of the Invisible Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, Mr. Bill Wilkinson. Oh, Imperial Wizard, can you tell me, and us, 100 years after you your predecessors set the South aflame with the cross burnings, lynchings, and other events, you should be bothering this country still?
Wow, so the reporter's very obviously not favorable to this guy at all, right? After you set the South ablaze with cross burnings, why do you bother us still? Fascinating.
To begin with, I believe a slight rebuttal is in order for your opening statements, or the opening statements that was made about the Klan. We are not anti-Catholic. We are not anti-Semitic.
Right, so we kind of missed that part. The Klan is anti-Semitic and anti-Catholic, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. But this guy felt like being labeled anti-Semitic or anti-Catholic was disadvantageous to him in this moment. They've dropped that charade. I think they're okay with Catholics being members now. I don't know, but they're most definitely anti-Semitic.
We believe in the white race. We believe that at this point in time that white Americans are being treated as second-class citizens, that the federal laws, the civil rights laws, have created a dual system of justice in this country.
You hearing this? For real, this is a direct, exact, word-for-word copy from what comes out of the mouths of Congress right now. Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, hell, Donald Trump have said these exact words. Seriously, 1982, November 4th, 1982, exact copy.
Dual system of justice in this country, a set of federal laws that protects the interest of minorities, and local and state laws.
But Grand and Imperial Wizard,
if I may, of white people.
If I may interrupt, if I might be so bold as to interrupt the Imperial Wizard,
He's making fun of him. I think that's pretty funny.
It says on a sheet that you people hand out to the young and the youths of our high schools.
Just make note of what he just said there. On this sheet you hand out to the young and the youth of in the high schools, that's one of the strategies of the far right, is to indoctrinate children. It's always been the strategy of the far right, of authoritarians. And as a matter of fact, Hitler did this exact thing, and there's a TV show called Flashpoint that's run by Kenneth Copeland. It's got like a bunch of televangelists on it, right? Just listen to like the first few seconds of this clip that I found the other day. I'm listening to this Flashpoint episode, and I happen across this. This is Valentine's Day 2023, February 14th.
You know, when we look back on Hitler, Hitler went for the youth. The enemy always goes for the youth. We must take up arms and go for our youth, arms of the truth and of godly principles. But
so they justify brainwashing children, sending out pamphlets to children, and writing books like propaganda books for children about pro-gun children's books. I'm dead serious. This exists. It's on my channel. I read through this book. It's called Hands Off or Paws Off My Hand Cannon or something like that. They write anti-trans children's books, really. Now, the right would counter and say, well, there's Drag Queen Story Hour for children. That is literally, that's not trans people. Okay? That's not indoctrinating anybody into anything. That's just theater. Theater, I might add, that Rudy Giuliani engaged in. Rudy Giuliani dressed up in drag exactly the same way that people dress in drag when they go to Drag Queen Story Hour.
You know, you're really beautiful. And a woman that looks like that has to have her own special scent.
Oh, thank you. Maybe you could tell me what you think of this scent.
I like that.
This may be the best of all. Oh, you dirty boy, you. Oh. Donald, I thought you were a gentleman.
You can't say I didn't try.
How many Republican politicians are there out there that have dressed in drag? Like a billion. Even George Santos dressed in drag. This is theater. It is not about ideology. They're not brainwashing children into this or that. It's just theater, and it's existed for thousands of years. The left is not brainwashing children. But you know who is? And who did? Hitler did. The KKK did. And currently, the right is, with things like bravebooks.us, this website. Really, I mean, Sean Spicer wrote a propaganda book for children, The Parrots Go Bananas. Shia Raichik, the Libs of TikTok account, she wrote one of them. Steven Crowder wrote one. There are a billion books here. Like every major right-wing political influencer has written a children's book. And it's up here. If you want to see more of them, it's absolutely unhinged from reality, but they're on my Telltale Reads YouTube channel. This has been the explicit goal of the KKK since day one, and Hitler. If you want to be like Hitler, then be my guest, I suppose. Just be honest about it.
It says on a sheet that you people hand out to the young and the youths of our high schools, it says, if you want to join the Klan, quote, I swear that I am of white, non-Jewish heritage. Are you fed up with special privileges given to blacks? That's a quotation from your own literature.
It's an exact quote from all kinds of Republicans today. Not even far-right ones. I'm talking like moderate, regular old Republicans. The KKK has taken over the Republican Party. Are they Nazis? Yeah, they probably have some sympathies with Nazis. I would say that the KKK I would say that the KKK is the Republican Party today. They put a concerted effort into co-opting one of the parties, and they succeeded. It took 20, 30, 40 years. This is from 1982. Took them 40 years, but they succeeded. And Donald Trump's victory was one of the biggest nails in the coffin.
Absolutely. We are
Well,
a
what do you
Christian.
mean you're not anti-Semitic?
We are a Christian organization. We also don't allow Buddhists or Muslims or atheists in the organization.
When did you take in the Pat Buchanans? When I was a kid in Dubuque, Iowa, the Ku Klux Klan, which was then fairly powerful in Indiana, about 1922 or 3, somewhere in there, you were anti-Catholic.
It's interesting that they were anti-Catholic, right? Because it kind of solidifies the Klan's position as being very Protestant. You know, today, the Republican Party is very Protestant. Now, it's full of Catholics, of course, too, but Protestantism, televangelists, the evangelical voting bloc, is not the same as the Catholic voting bloc. They're separate entities. And the evangelical voting bloc is very much in control of the Republican Party right now. Although I think there are as many Catholics and evangelicals, I mean, the same number roughly in the United States, there are some Catholics that are kind of left-leaning who accept the fact of evolution, who don't really have a huge problem with gay people, that kind of thing. There are no evangelicals out there who accept evolution and who do not hate gay people. Evangelicals act as one cohesive voting bloc. Catholics don't necessarily. I guess the Klan has started to accept the right-leaning Catholics into their ideology, into their system of governance or whatever now. But it's disturbing how similar their rhetoric is today to what it was back then. Keep listening here. See what the Klan's response is to their anti-Catholic position.
the Klan has had different views from time to time on lesser issues. The one issue we've never changed on is that of segregation. We believe that God has commanded us to separate ourselves from other races. In fact, that's not a unique stand. Billy Graham, just a few years ago, himself segregated his crusade audiences. He preached.
Wow, that's fascinating, right? Billy Graham, if you're unfamiliar, is a televangelist from the time. He was a televangelist back in the 80s, and he and Jerry Falwell Sr. were the two people that really put a concerted effort into co-opting the Republican Party and making it synonymous with the evangelical Christian religion. They wanted to make them the same thing. Now we have Franklin Graham, who is the younger one, bizarrely. You'd think Frank is the old guy name and Billy is the young guy name. But anyways, Franklin Graham is Billy Graham's son, and he's preaching today and endorsing Donald Trump and yelling about guns and how good they are and blah, 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 all that other stuff. We also have Kenneth Copeland, who was around roughly at that time, who was also pretty powerful at the time already. And, a whole bunch of other people. I mean, the Klan and televangelism and the Republican Party are now effectively one single entity. That's how this guy can be so smug and still wear a bedsheet. You can make fun of me all you want, he's probably thinking, but you have no idea how powerful I am. It may not look like I'm that powerful right now because I'm wearing a bedsheet or whatever, but trust me, there are wheels being turned, things being pushed into motion that will solidify my talking points forever. That's effectively what he's thinking. And he was correct.
Southern Baptist and the National Baptist, one was black, one was white. They practice and preach segregation. So we didn't invent segregation. We just still believe in it.
Let me ask you about something, and you did correct it, let me say, before the show started, something I was unaware of. But there are a number of Klan organizations, and I gather it is not yours, who march in tandem, arm in arm, with members of the American Nazi Party. Now, the Nazis were responsible.
Yeah, they're nearly identical, the two groups, Nazis and KKK. Matter of fact, it's actually against the law in Germany to fly the Nazi flag, right? So at rallies, neo-Nazis, instead of flying the Nazi flag, will fly the Confederate flag, which, by the way, is also the flag of the KKK, of course. Or it's a flag that the KKK uses, at least. It's all the same ideology. It's all the same belief, the same hate. It's all hate-fueled garbage. Always was.
For the murder, not simply of Jews in Germany, but American pilots, American soldiers. They're guilty of all manner of horrid atrocities. They have on their, on their record some 250,000 American dead. Now, why would any patriotic American, or one who calls himself a patriotic American, be anywhere near the swastika, the insignia?
Not just anybody that calls themselves patriotic American, but anybody that is obsessed with being a patriot, screams about being a patriot. You think today's Republican Party didn't exist back then? Oh, it existed. May have been less common then than it is now. May have been more underground, but it was definitely there. This ideology that we see coming out of Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Kenneth Copeland, Donald Trump, the ideology we see coming out of them has existed for a long time. They're just comfortable pulling it out in the open now is all.
Of Hitler's Germany.
Well, as you conceded before the show, I did clear up that point. The Klan, the Invisible Empire, which I head, detests Nazis as much as we do communists. But I'd like to make one thing clear, that there's too much hype today about the Germans and the Nazis. Let's not forget that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and they led to death marches in Bataan.
Wow. So Germans, yeah, I mean, they were bad, sure, whatever. The Nazis were bad, I guess, but we're not focusing in enough on the people of color and what they did during World War II. Fascinating how he zeroes in on people that don't look like him, right? Wants to talk about how evil they are, but completely ignore what, the Nazis did. Insane, dude. I mean, I'm not saying the Japanese didn't do bad things. They absolutely did. Oh, my God. I've read some papers about what happened back then, and from what I can tell, the Japanese were even more brutal than the Nazis in some cases. So, yeah, not fantastic. But it's really interesting to me that he zeroes in on the people that are not Aryans, right?
I don't believe that we should condemn all of the Germans for something that happened in Germany
course
40
not.
years ago. And I do condemn what Hitler did to any.
Why would
to
any
anyone.
patriot, someone who calls himself a patriot, and a Klan's groups with which I guess you're associated,
For the record, the reason he did that is because he realizes how optically bad it looks to support Nazis. Not because he disagrees. He actually fully agrees with Hitler and what he did and all that stuff. It just looks really terrible.
patriot, and a Klan's groups with which I guess you're associated with members, if not the leadership, why would they march with people who are march under the swastika?
We don't. We
You don't. Why do your
Yes, they do.
Others,
do that?
I believe, to make it clear at first, we're the only national Klan organization left. There have been those that have come and gone. It's sort of like the political parties, the Democrats.
Oh, it's the other guys that wear hoods and capes and all that stuff. Not this guy that wears hoods and capes. Right.
Republicans, American independents. They come and they go. They splinter and they regroup and rejoin. Right now, we are the major unquestioned Klan organization in America. There's some people that we have expelled from our organization that will start other branches. In their anxiety to get.
What a convenient way to completely evade responsibility for past injustices. That was the old organization. People do bad things and then try to avoid consequences for those bad things. Yeah, we know you didn't do, or we know you don't do those things now. But guess what? Conservatives did support slavery in the United States. People on the political right supported slavery, whether you like that or not. Right here is a perfect example. The right supported segregation, whether you like that fact or not. You did. The beliefs that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Donald Trump hold, the logical conclusion, the logical end to those beliefs is segregation, hatred, vilification, and ultimately exactly what happened with Hitler. That's the logical conclusion to this stuff. You can't escape responsibility that easily.
Membership
All right,
and support.
as
They
I
will
gather,
join with anyone, including Nazis.
This is not your organization, doesn't believe that. But I believe a quote by you I read in a book on the Klan today. You were denouncing the quote, I think it was Jew-controlled media.
Oh, that's super common. Oh, my God. Like, we hear that even today, Jew-controlled media. Absolutely. But remember, this is in 1982, and it was a different environment. Pay attention to how he reacts to the accusation that he's anti-Semitic.
I may have used that term.
It's a direct quote.
I may have used that term some years ago.
Well, what do you mean by that?
But I don't mean by that anything at this point in time. I believe that a lot of Jews are.
So is the media not controlled by Jews now? Was it just a fabricated lie then? What happened? What's different now than then? Ultimately, nothing. The difference is it's politically disadvantageous to be anti-Semitic in 1982, so he's going with what looks optically best.
Prominent in the media, but I believe a lot of Baptists and a lot of Methodists and a lot of other people
Why would
are.
you use the term Jew-controlled media?
Well,
I mean, you don't run around saying the Baptist-controlled media is keeping us off the air, do you?
I no longer use that term. This has been a number of years ago that I would have made that comment, and I'm not apologizing for what I might have said at that time.
All right, let's talk about blacks.
All right.
Why
you
running?
went-
He's letting him get away with this. That's not fair. For what it's worth, the Klan does move from subject to subject to subject, whatever is politically advantageous in that moment. I actually, when I lived in West Virginia, I lived in what's called a sundown town. There were no black people in the town. A sundown town is a town where black people are not welcome, and if they show up, they better not be there by sundown, or something's going to be done about it. That's the idea. When I lived in this sundown town, I got bags of rice with pamphlets thrown at my door. Everybody got it all the way up and down the street. So the KKK was driving in a car. They filled up a bunch of these bags with rice, and they'd toss them from the window of the car to somebody's door. It'd hit their front door. They'd come out in the morning and see it there, and they'd read it. They have the rice in the bags so that it's weighted so they can easily throw it from the car. But just take a look at the front and the back. This is the front. Original Night Riders, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, National Office. And they got like a little hotline here. Really, a hotline. Join us today for God, race, and nation. And here's the back. Islamization of America. When this was thrown at my door, this is, 10 years ago now, I think. When this is thrown at my door, it was politically advantageous to talk about how evil Muslims are. Islamization of America. In 1996, Bill Clinton became the first U.S. president to hold an Eid-ul-Fitr dinner at the White House to celebrate the end of Ramadan, the Muslim month-long dawn-to-dusk fast. Eid al-Fitr includes 6 takbirs, the raising of hands and shouting Allahu Akbar, to declare that Allah, the moon god, is the greatest. Most of the things that they cite here have some connection to reality, but are really loose and completely taken out of context. I think that Bill Clinton did hold some kind of a dinner to celebrate the connection between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries doing deals with them and stuff. But they're making it seem like Bill Clinton was turning the country Muslim, intentionally trying to create a Muslim nation here or whatever. And also, Allahu Akbar literally just translate to God is great. That's it. That's all it means. In 2014, Rocky Mountain High School in Fort Collins, Colorado, became the first high school to recite the Pledge of Allegiance in Arabic, replacing one nation under God with one nation under Allah. Now, this is fascinating, too. Let me explain this one. In an effort to be inclusive, a school club, like an after-school club, got 14 different countries to be represented, 14 different languages, 14 different cultures, and they all said the pledge in their own language. I don't remember exactly how many different languages were represented, but that was the context here. And since a Middle Eastern country was represented in this effort to show that America is made of many different people and different cultures and everything, there was a Middle Eastern country there. And the Middle Eastern, or the Arabic word for God is Allah. That's literally what it translates to. It just means God. It's fascinating how they take a grain of truth and twist it out of proportion, right? Department of Homeland Security, whose senior fellow, Mohammed Eliberi, recently declared that the USA is an Islamic country. Is that true? I mean, is this even a real person? Most of this stuff has had a grain of truth to it, so I'm assuming that there was a leader of Homeland Security named Mohammed, I'm guessing. But they're just fear-mongering about all of it. They want to scare the shit out of everybody they possibly can. Islam isn't in America to be equal to any other faith, but to become dominant. This is a quote, supposedly. The Quran should be the highest authority in America, and Islam the only accepted religion on earth. Omar Ahmed, chairman of the Board of CARE, Council on America-Islamic Relations. Rejecting Islam is not racism, it is patriotism. Allah is not God. Actually, that's incorrect. Allah is God. Literally, that's the translation. So that's how they work, you know? They set out to twist things around and make it look to be something other than what it actually is. That's how the KKK has always been. That's how they've always operated. Keep listening to what he says here.
Wait a minute, I want to go. My brother came back from the airborne in Vietnam, and he told me, that of the bodies that he took out as a medical officer, he said, 50% of those guys were black kids, served in the United States and Vietnam. This was it was a crack frontline unit, and these were American blacks who died in higher numbers for their country in Southeast Asia in that war than did white Americans, as a matter of fact, in the Vietnam War. Now, how can you be against a race which contains people who are out there fighting for their country just as much as white, Christian, Protestant Americans?
A lot of the time, before he even answers, I haven't heard this answer, but I'd be willing to bet he's going to provide the separate but equal argument. This is the most popular argument back then. They knew that they were kind of losing on blacks are inferior to whites, so they started going with they're the same, they're equal or whatever, but we want them to be separate. Separate but equal, to my knowledge, actually, that phrase came from a Supreme Court ruling that said you can have blacks and whites water fountains and bathrooms as long as they're maintained to the same standard, basically.
That's something else that needs to be cleared up, Pat. We're not against the black race. We're not against. We believe in free enterprise for this country. We believe that everyone should have the same rights.
Well, Mr. Wizard, it says right here. Wait a minute, Mr. Wizard. Let me interrupt you for a minute, Mr. Wizard. It
God, he's going to rip this dude a new asshole. I love it.
says right here, you believe in the final solution, which is black repatriation to Africa. Now, do you really think...
Right. See, he believes in what's politically advantageous in that moment. The real goal of the KKK is to create a white ethno-state, no matter what the method is, whether that's ethnic cleansing, which is removing, people of a nationality from this area and moving them somewhere else, or genocide, which is what Hitler did. No matter what the method is, they want this to be a white country and white only. Up to now, they've settled for blacks living in, different neighborhoods from whites and drinking from different water fountains. But the ultimate goal was to separate them entirely and move them out.
But now look, I'm not going to be cut off in the middle.
No, but I'm not going to be shut off either. You're running around on a bed sheet. I don't have the bed sheet.
Oh, that's good. I love it. Yeah, I don't have the bed sheet.
But I just want to tell you, I want to ask you this question. Can you imagine this country repatriating all the black Americans that Pat just spoke about to Africa?
No.
I mean, what kind of nonsense
No, I
is
can't.
that?
Yeah, right. Even if they did, he has no idea what kind of damage that would do to the economy. Holy shit, dude. Economies only grow steadily because there are people to step into roles and become new purchasers and sellers and stuff. That's why immigration is so good, in all seriousness. Immigration's fantastic for an economy. Oh my God. Do you want to become a more powerful country? Open the floodgates and let anybody in who wants in. Seriously. Immigration is a phenomenally good thing for a country. Phenomenally good. Why is the Republican Party opposed to immigration? Because they're not white. Because this mindset right here that we're listening to has completely co-opted the Republican Party. Anyway, this guy, he's making fun of the Grand Wizard, but the Grand Wizard doesn't really care because he knows that he has more power than this guy even realizes. Behind the scenes, this guy's been pulling strings and making deals and gaining more and more political power. And in the following 40 years, up to this point right now, this guy will make major political gains until we have major members of Congress repeating his talking points.
Well, what are you saying it for then?
I'm not saying it.
Well, it says right here.
No, that's your paper. That's not my paper.
That's your paper. I took the quote and wrote it on this blue type.
That's not my paper. Now, to get back to it, now just a minute. I answered your question. Now, I want to finish what I was saying. We feel that affirmative action is discriminating against white people.
See, you got to be joking. Like, this is so ridiculously on the nose. You've heard this before, right? This is the argument being presented right now against affirmative action. This is what the Supreme Court is weighing right now. Affirmative action is discrimination against white people. The Supreme Court is using KKK talking points to adjudicate on issues. Dead serious.
Against white people. And there is no question about it. Two wrongs don't make a right. Because black people were hurt and discriminated against in the past does not justify the discrimination against white people now.
Okay, affirmative action is not discrimination against white people. Affirmative action is simply an attempt to make things more fair and equitable. That's it. It's not like you're discriminating against people who are just as qualified for this thing or that thing or whatever. It's not. This is a complete misrepresentation of what affirmative action actually is. Okay, there are 15%, give or take, black people in the country. That means major companies that employ tens of thousands of people should have a roughly representative number of black employees. If you have 150 employees, that's a really, really tiny sample size, and it's a totally different thing. But in hiring practices, if you have 10,000 employees, you should make sure that it's roughly equally distributed throughout society. Otherwise, it shows that there's discrimination taking place. Now, if this 10,000 person company, say Walmart, has 100% white people, 0 black people as employees, there's obviously some kind of discrimination situation happening, right? And you should try to correct for that in the numbers. May not even be conscious. May not even be something that like the hiring managers are even doing knowingly. There doesn't have to be a knowing actor anywhere in the system for there to be racism present. Every person can be a perfectly honest, left-leaning individual, and there still be racism in the system. That is why affirmative action exists, to account for systemic racism that isn't even conscious. That's it. It's not discrimination against white people. But again, talking points being used at the Supreme Court right now, and it's working. They're probably going to erase affirmative action soon. Something the KKK has been working toward for 50 years, obviously.
Against white people now,
Mr. Wilkinson,
and we're
I
asking
didn't
for an
ask you-
end to that.
Look, I'm against reverse discrimination. I'm
Okay,
against racial
good.
quotas. I'm against affirmative action as it's practiced. But you said, when I introduced you, I didn't say that your organization was. I said historically to most Americans, you're anti-Catholic and anti-Semitic and racist. In other words, anti-black. You said,
Okay.
we're not anti-Catholic.
Right.
We're not anti-Semitic. You didn't deny the racist thing.
Well, it depends on your definition of racist.
What-
Wow, dude. Twist yourself into a pretzel much? The KKK grand wizard sitting in a bed sheet with a hood says, well, it depends on what you mean by racist. Oh my God, dude. Just admit it. Just come out and be honest about it. Absolutely crazy, dude.
segregationist, okay? I believe that God has commanded me not to mix with other races.
How far
For
would
that
you-
reason,
Isn't that fascinating? They use God to back up their belief that segregation is good.
with other races.
How far
For
would
that
you-
reason, I want to have schools where I can send my children to a white school. I want to be able to go to my white neighborhoods, to white businesses,
All right,
for those
can do
things.
that.
So if that terms
You
me
can
as a
do that.
racist, then I'm a racist.
Wait a minute.
Perfect. Then you're a racist. I think we're all in agreement here, right?
You can do that, but you can't have tax exemptions in your all-white school. And if
Well,
it's a public school,
you-
now black kids whose parents' taxes pay for that school, they got a right to go to that neighborhood school. Now, if you want an all-white school, all-white academy, you can do that right now. You just don't get a tax exemption for it.
Right. It would just be a private school, no tax exemptions.
So what's your complaint?
You say you can do that. Now, maybe I can, maybe you can, but what about the poor people that don't have the money to send their children to private schools? They can't. They're being deprived the right to practice their religion because they don't have the money to send them to a private school.
Is this sounding familiar? This is the evangelical/Republican Party position right now. I'm suffering religious discrimination because I'm not allowed to force my religion down kids' throats. You know, a couple of years ago, you can look back on my channel for information on this. There's this health teacher that was teaching my kid in health class about how you can't be moral without God. Sex is supposed to be saved for after marriage, and atheists are evil, trans people are evil, gay people are evil, all this other stuff. And when I reported her for that, she claimed to be the victim of religious discrimination. She was being attacked because she's not allowed to voice her opinions. Oh no, she's allowed to do that. She's not allowed to force her religious beliefs down my kid's throat. She was acting as an agent of the government at the time and had a compelled audience. They had no choice but to sit there and listen. And she was forcing her beliefs upon other people, other kids. That's what the Klan wants. That's what evangelicals have always wanted. It's what it's always been about. This is how the evangelical movement does it. They flip it. They turn it around. They make it seem like if they're not allowed to force their beliefs on you, then you're discriminating against them. Fascinating glimpse into the modern tactics of the Republican Party, right?
School. There's no reason why in this great land of ours we couldn't have a three-tiered school system, a black school and a white school and an integrated school, and give everyone their choice. We would have much less dissension. We would have much less racial problems in the schools.
Less racial problems in the schools. Yeah, I suppose if there was an all-white school, then there wouldn't be a single black kid being beaten up in that white school for being black. So yeah, I guess I could argue that. But that doesn't speak to the racial problems in society as a whole. He's literally advocating for dividing the country into two tiers. That's his word, not mine. That's insane.
Racial problems in the schools, And if those people that are seeking to integrate the races in this country really were seeking to do the best for both races, they would adopt this system and let integration proceed gradually.
What do you think our founding fathers meant when they said "we, the people of the United States"?
Well, I won't get into that debate.
They meant United States citizens. They meant people in this country. And guess what? He says, I won't get into that. You know why? Because it's a losing position for him, and he knows it is.
That debate, but
Well, I know, but you're sitting here in your bed sheet telling us all that the only
I love it, dude. This guy is ripping him a new one.
thing you're against.
you're really upset about my bed sheet,
Oh
aren't
yeah,
you?
I think if I were you, I would be so ashamed of myself. I mean, I can't imagine walking around in that silly costume, telling people to be against blacks and against Jews.
Yeah, exactly. This dude is on point. Who the is this reporter, and why haven't I done a piece on him before? This dude is awesome.
Have you ever seen the Pope and the Cardinals in their
Yeah, and I think they look stupid too.
costumes?
Yeah, but they're religious and they're for something, and you're just nothing but against something. And
You could have just said they look stupid too. You don't have to defend stupid costumes. If they look stupid, then that's just what it is.
you're against.
And for what it's worth, this costume looks way more stupid than the Pope's costume. I think the Pope's costume's actually pretty metal, personally.
The very spirit of
I
this
believe
country.
in the same God.
You're
that
against
Pope
the
does.
thing.
No, we're not.
You're against the thing that makes this
No.
country a unity and that makes this country great. And I think you're a disgrace.
You know
Dude, I love this guy. Who the is this reporter? I love him to death.
nothing about what I believe and what I
I just
stand
heard
for.
what you believed.
Yeah, he just told us what he believed. What is he talking about? You know nothing about it.
And you
That's what you were here to tell us. If we know nothing about it, then you failed, right?
and you think
Now,
that's
you tell me,
wrong? I believe in God. Is that wrong?
Do you deny that you said this? This is the literature you're handing out to schools, to school children in America? I just quoted this from your own pamphlet. Are you fed up, it says here, with blacks following you home, trying to beat you up?
That's
Do you
right.
deny that you said that?
No, I don't. And let me tell you, that happens more times in America than what you can shake a
Black?
stick at.
I bet. Let's see some evidence of it. You know what's fascinating about that is the fact that the right has been contriving evidence of this happening. This doesn't happen almost at all. I mean, I'm sure somewhere in a country of 330 million people, one of those people beat up one of those other people at some point in time. I mean, no reasons cited, of course, but sure. Hell, let's take the extra step. Maybe a black person beat up a white person because they're white. Maybe. Do you have any idea how many black people white people killed? I'm just saying it's not as one-sided as these people want it to seem. The black community is not en masse attacking the white community. This is a fabricated problem. And what's really sad about this is that this talking point is still circulating right now, like today. I just addressed a story about this exact thing maybe a month ago. Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert cartoon, talked about this. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Hang on. After saying white people should get the hell away from black people, he says this.
It makes no sense to help black Americans if you're white. It's over. Don't even think it's worth trying. And I'm also really sick of seeing video after video of black Americans beating up non-black citizens.
I've never seen a video of that. This is not happening on any kind of real scale that should be concerning. I'm sure some guy somewhere did this for nefarious reasons out of 330 million people, but this is a made-up, fabricated, nonsensical problem.
I realize it's anecdotal.
Oh, do you? You realize it's anecdotal? Okay.
And it doesn't give me a full picture of what's happening. But every damn day I look on social media and there's some black person beating the shit out of some white person.
You know why that is? Because he follows right-wing accounts exclusively. Now, what are these right-wing accounts repeating? What are they spreading? What are they trying to convince their people of? Exactly what the KKK has been trying to convince people of for decades. Something that's simply not happening. They will fabricate evidence for it if that's what it takes.
Let me tell you, that happens more times in America than what you can shake a
Blacks?
stick at. Blacks.
Try to follow you home and beat you up. I mean,
We've had
really?
more racial
You're
problems
a damn
and muggings.
disgrace to the country.
No,
Oh,
Tom.
yes, you are.
I have a strong belief.
And you know
In
what?
fact-
You people
in
were
fact,
beaten Beaten, beaten, beaten. I don't know what we're doing in 1982.
Oh, sorry to tell you, bro, but we're going to be doing it in 2023 also.
Talking to you.
Well, that's your problem, Tom. But let me tell you one thing. I'm not beaten, the Klan is not beaten, and the white race is not beaten. No more than the Democrats is beating or the Republicans is beaten. They're all fighting for the things that they believe in, and we believe in something.
All right, what
and
do you believe in?
earnestly, through the law.
Well, let's get
Now, you tell me what you
Trying
were
to
against.
achieve
What do
it.
you believe in?
What we believe in.
What are you for?
We believe in God, we believe in the United States of America, and we believe that God has commanded us to separate ourselves from other races. Not because we hate the other races or because we feel that.
For what it's worth, the Old Testament did have some stuff about segregating from other groups, but in the New Testament, that was currently the law, right? People weren't allowed to hang around certain other types of people like Samaritans, and Jesus flagrantly broke those rules because Jesus cared about other people and didn't care what race they were. Jesus was a unifying, loving force, generally speaking. And these people are finding that one verse in the Bible that says you should separate and ignoring everything after it. Like I've said a billion times, the Bible is a big book made up of 33,000 verses, I think 66 books written over the course of 3,000 years. So you can find any justification for anything in there. But Christians are supposed to follow the words of Jesus. And if that's what you're doing, then there's no reason to segregate this the way this guy is saying.
We're better or worse, but
We're gonna
because
have to
we
take a
feel it's
break.
God's commandment. And if you criticize that and our religion, then you're criticizing the Christianity for the last 2,000 years.
All right.
No, they're criticizing the Old Testament. Christianity, Christ, Jesus' message did not communicate that. So anyway, that was the end of the interview with the KKK member. I am honestly disturbed by how similar the talking points are. I mean, they're exact. They're word-for-word copies. Things that this guy said are arguments being heard in front of the Supreme Court right now. And more than half of the Supreme Court justices agree with this guy. Should tell you something about how deeply burrowed into U.S. politics the Klan has gotten themselves. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. This dude is terrible.